I love a solid game compilation. From multi-carts to modern collections, it's hard to argue with more video game per video game. Hell, in the present day, with how unreliable support for backwards compatibility is, these collections are some of the only official ways to play a bunch of these games of bygone eras. But I can't be alone in feeling a little disappointed upon opening up a collection and being greeted by a flat menu, where I'm then told to select my game. Honestly, I don't even need any crazy extra modes or anything, just something that makes it feel a little more alive. And this is exactly what Namco Museum achieves. Namco Museum is a series you've most likely heard of. It's had a title on almost every major console and handheld since 1995. But the most interesting and experimental of the series were the original releases of Namco Museum on the PlayStation 1. Originally, Namco Museum was split into 5 different volumes, one for each letter of Namco. On each of these discs was a collection of anywhere from 5 to 7 classic Namco arcade games. But this wasn't what made the titles so interesting. What gave the games their draw was the titular museum mode, where you could explore a 3D digital museum presenting exhibits on each of the games featured on the collection. This is what makes these games so fun and interesting to me. Digital Museum is such a fun concept that sprang forth from the new potential of 3D technology in the mid-90s. So let me go ahead and take you on a tour of all 5 Namco museums. To begin, every title starts with a cute, pre-rendered cutscene that tends to feature Pac-Man getting the tar beaten out of him until he ends up at the front door of the museum. Also, there's a cute little Pac-Man running sprite that runs faster when you mash buttons. The first museum is pretty simple. After passing by the robo-receptionist who offers a name registration service, you'll enter the central atrium of the museum, with a door to each exhibit in addition to the lounge. Each exhibit features a small hallway with multiple pieces of artwork, advertisements, and merchandise on display. It's cool to see all the small little details. Near the end of the halls, you'll encounter a book featuring gameplay tips in addition to a projector which will allow you to view slideshows of sprites. The most fun part of the museum is when you walk to the end of an exhibit, where you'll emerge in a cute little diorama representing the game in addition to an arcade machine to play the game on. This is easily my favorite part of the museums. Pac-Man has you hanging out in his yard right outside his packed house. As for the game, it's Pac-Man. What do you want me to say? As for the rest of the games, I'll start with a little mini review and then I'll talk about the exhibit itself. Rally X is one of the more uncommon games in this collection, but it was my sister's favorite growing up. You play as a blue race car collecting flags in a maze, all the while dodging and hotboxing the enemy red cars. Keep an eye on your fuel gauge though. This is also the game where the special flag seen in Smash Bros. Originates from.
Oh, Bob can't reach him in time. Oh, no!
Upon collecting it, all flags have their points doubled for the rest of the stage. New Rally X follows the same concept with tweaked graphics, new music, lower overall difficulty, and a lucky flag that gives you a bonus based on your current fuel level. The Rally X exhibit lets you watch the Formula cars race by and even walk right up to one at the end of the room. Plus, both Rally X captains are available. It's Galaga. I don't have much to say about this. Bangs though. The Galaga exhibit has you walk right into the cockpit of spacecraft with all sorts of flashing lights and a rotating cube. Something about JPEG skyboxes is very nostalgic for me. Gotta love the crunchy textures. Pole Position is a pretty standard F1 racing game. The sound design exists. The gameplay also exists. I think it would be a bit more fun if I was playing with the NegCon, but sadly I don't have that luxury. The Pole Position exhibit has you on the start line of the race with an adorable little Namco blimp circling the area. In Bosconian, your goal is to hunt down these big floating bases while fending off asteroids and various other ships. You can take out the bases by destroying each of their circular segments, or you could go the Death Star route and one-shot them with a laser to their core. Nothing too crazy, but I love an arcade game with crunchy voice clips.
Locked off. Alive.
The Bosconian exhibit takes place in this trippy, rotating space room with one of the game's bases floating around the starry sky. Finally, we have my childhood favorite, Toy Pop, which has you running around floors filled with murderous toys to hunt down golden hearts that unlock the door to the next floor. The fun part about this game is that not every enemy can be hurt by the same weapon, so you have to constantly keep tabs on which enemies you're fighting and where the weapon pickups are, so you don't get cornered with a weapon they're immune to. The exhibit itself is in a white void? I really have no idea why Toy Pop isn't like the castle you play the game in, and is instead this massive white space with Toy Pop written on the ground. The only object in the room other than the arcade machine is a box holding Pino and Acha dolls, plus the exit. I feel like if I stuck a CRT filter and some spooky PNGs over this, I could scare a couple 11-year-olds.
You just lost.
No Nostalgia Critic November! So this video was going to come out in November, but I got lazy. So if you're watching this, I guess show this to your friend in November? I don't know. Onward. The final area of the museum is the lounge, which features magazine covers, a jukebox with a sound test, a corkboard with the credits, and a high score book on the bar. This right here is like prime PS1 chill zone. If my poly count was less than 1,000, I'd be sitting here sipping Coronas that rotate to face the camera. This is defo the most basic museum of the 5, but I love the reverent ambiance the main museum track establishes for the hub. It tells you that this is a place to be respected and learn from. Plus, who could say anything bad about this place when you have this jolly little fellow at the bottom of your screen? The only real complaint I have is that the load times are pretty damn long, especially considering that for every piece you have to load into the art, load back into the museum, and then do it all over again if you want to look at something else. But it's a very early PS1 title, so what are you gonna do? Next up, we have Volume 2, which starts off with Pac-Man Gaming. And then he promptly gets blasted off into space. Something that kicks ass about these intros is that they slowly look more and more like fucked up animations you'd see in the bowling alley when you roll a strike. Like, it all ends with all the characters getting abducted by Mappy flying a spaceship that transforms into the museum. What? Also, for some reason, instead of using a cute running sprite of a character for the loading screen, they use a really pixelated JPEG of Mappy. Upon entering the museum, you'll notice it's the same layout as the museum from Volume 1, the sole exception being the wider hallways. Other than that, let's jump right into the games. Apparently Xevious was a breakout hit in Japan, and playing it for myself, I think I might be a little young for this game. To start, the music, if you can even call it that, is grating to say the least. And the enemies just aren't that interesting. They tend to be some form of geometric shape hurling pellets at you. I will admit, lining up a bomb and nailing a ground unit feels really good. Like, damn, I'm nice at this. Fuck. Also, I'm not great at this game, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Maybe my shoot-'em-up taste is a bit too modern for this game. The Xevious exhibit takes place in this silver dome with even more floating orbs. This one is strangely abstract, especially since most of the shoot-'em-up games take place in a cockpit or a hangar. Okay, why is Super Pac-Man's sound design like this? Oh my lord, it's annoying. Like, listen to this shit. What happened from Pac-Man to this game that made it like this? Regardless, unlike regular Pac-Man, in this game you practice breaking and entering to eat all the food in the stage. You open up these rooms by picking up the keys scattered across the stage. In addition to the power pellet, you can also use this super pellet, which makes Pac-Man comically large and capable of eating doors like a rabid beaver. This one's fine. Nowhere close to the original, but serviceable. One thing to note is this game is actually exclusive to the American and European releases of Volume 2. In Japan, it's instead a game called QDQ, which hides a secret game, Bombi. You would access this by entering a cheat while QDQ is booting. The Super Pac-Man exhibit features a ghost-ridden bar and theater. The original 4 ghosts can be found near the bar, with Inky and Pinky being sloshed out of their gourds. Big Man Clyde styling the fuck out of that bow tie, and Blinky just happy to be here. Wait long enough and the show will begin. Looks something like a thriller for the ghosts. Now Gapless may make you say, hey, that's just Galaga. And you'd be right, it's actually a sequel to Galaga. What sets it apart from its predecessor is that if you blast certain enemies, they'll drop power-ups, including this big tractor beam that lets you add enemy ships to your little battalion. I really wish this game was re-released more frequently. It rocks! The Gapless exhibit is a little odd. It opens inside of the ship's tractor beam, sucking in both you and the arcade machine. But you can walk out of the beam and right up to the ship for a closer look if you want. I want to share with you my first 5 seconds playing Grobda. Needless to say, I was not ready. So once you get ready, this game is pretty neat. You have the little tank down here, you've got a big rainbow laser and an energy shield. Your goal is to clear out all the enemies. It's simple enough, but the cool thing is, killing an enemy makes them explode, which can lead to these massive chain reactions. The only caveat is you have to be ready to block with your shield if you're too close. You have to keep an eye on your energy meter though, because activating your shield will slowly drain it. This is a pleasant one. The exhibit is a tank hangar, surrounded by supply crates. As is typical of these types of rooms, you can walk around and check out the ship all you like. I will admit, this game is cool, but I am dog-ass at Mappy. Your goal is to recover a bunch of stolen items from a house by bouncing on trampolines to change floors and opening doors to knock out the cats. Simple, but it just doesn't click with me. I get owned pretty quickly. Something neat about the game I noticed is enemy behavior. In the short time I played, I saw not only a cat hiding behind a safe, but I also saw a couple kittens just knock themselves out with doors. A fun game. Iconic music as well. Mappy's exhibit takes place in the same house as the game, featuring some of the game's enemies running around with some sort of transparency dysfunction. There's also paintings around the room featuring screenshots from the intro, including Pac-Man Gaming. Also, the exit to this room is absolutely horrifying. Dragon Buster is a 2D platformer with gameplay similar to the side-scrolling sections of Zelda 2. You can jump, swing your sword, and cast magic as long as you have some stocked up. Your goal is to get to the end of each stage and defeat the boss at the end. This game looks like something the characters of a Disney Channel movie would be playing in the background of their room as they talk about the Battle of the Bands or something. Like, this is a certifiable fake video game. One neat thing is that you actually get to choose which stage you progress to. Definitely neat for a game from 1985. I gotta say, the wizard and skeletons make me laugh. Soulful little sprites on them. Dragon Buster's exhibit takes place in one of the cave stages, with the titular dragon lurking in the shadows. A bit bland, but fitting. The lounge in this game has all the same amenities as last time. There's not a lot to say here since the game is very similar to Volume 1, but I would say that the game selection here is a little lacking to me. It doesn't quite have the punch of stuff like the original Pac-Man or Galaga. Now, with Volume 3's intro, you actually don't start with Pac-Man this time. Instead, gotcha, there he is. This intro is really nice. It adds these sick 3D title cards as each game's characters appear on screen. A cute touch. Swag money. Something you'll notice immediately about Volume 3 is that not only is the loading lightning quick, but the museum has received its first major redesign of the series. Here, you'll be walked right up to the receptionist, who reminds you not to smoke or touch the exhibits. I love this screen, very true to the digital museum experience. The exhibits are all present in the first room you arrive in. The major changes to the museum include the lounge getting split into the theater and the library, which I'll talk about in a bit, and the halls leading into the exhibits have themes based on their respective games. Now, let's talk about Galaxian. Yeah, it sure is Galaxian. It's like Galaga, but lame. The exhibit is a lot cooler than the game. You have this groovy track playing while the ship gets ready for takeoff. Everyone knows Dig Dug, a lovely arcade classic, and holy shit, Pooka Break! I love this little area. It reminds me of the jungle era stages in Ape Escape. Contender for my favorite exhibit across the series. Phozon is a very bizarre game. It has you controlling a molecule attempting to match the image they give you. If you mess up, you can press X to jettison your last atom. You also have to make sure to dodge this evil, fucked up cluster in the center. It's just a very strange game. The exhibit has you being studied like the little weirdo you are. Pole Position 2! It's more F1 racing, just like the first game. Except now you can shift gears up and down. That's it, really. The exhibit is a funny one. You've got an expo type event, with a car and woman as the main attraction, plus the arcade machine just shoved in the corner. It feels true to life to those weird collaborations where the devs seem more excited about the thing they're collaborating with than their own game. Tower of Draga. Based off a board game, you play as Gil, a knight attempting to scale the tower to defeat Draga, and rescue the princess. Also, I'm very bad at this game. It's similar to something like Hide Glide, where you don't actually hit your enemies with your sword, it's more like you ram into enemies while your sword is drawn. It's okay. A little slow for my liking, though. As for the exhibit, yeah, this one's pretty sick. You've got the arcade machine and the little protection bubble surrounded by stormy skies and Draga absolutely looming over you. The final game of this collection is Miss Pac-Man. Not much to say, but it's a much better sequel to Pac-Man than Super Pac-Man. It introduces multiple different layouts for mazes, in addition to these cute cutscenes showing off how the two Pacs met. The exhibit is very similar to the Pac-Man exhibit from the first game, except Pac's house is just the intro. Now you can actually enter his house. Upon entry, you'll be greeted by Miss Pac-Man with freakishly long human legs and Chomp Chomp. They're just grooving out to their own little Miss Pac-Man theme song. The rest of the room hosts the arcade machine and a TV playing Miss Pac-Man's declaration of control over the United States. To finish it out, I'll let my friend Bandy show you what's in the bathroom.
Oh boy, I wonder what's behind here.
Now, about the theater and library. The magazine covers seen in the lounge in volumes 1 and 2 have been delegated to the library here. It also features a very promising candidate for Tumblr Sexy Man had this game been more popular. I've combed the web trying to figure out if this guy has any history outside of this game, and can't seem to find anything. The only name I've seen him given is The Librarian by the Modeler's Resource. Strange. Anyway, he just shows you a chronological list of Namco's games. Opposite to the library, you'll find the theater, where you can see a bunch of characters chilling, including a very freaky Mappy, Pooka, and Miru from Pac and Pal, very sadly excluded from the Pac family. Looking into the theater itself, you can find the sprite slideshow, as well as the sound test, all combined into one item here. Volume 3 is a nice upgrade from the previous two titles. The loading times being reduced and an overall more detailed yet compact museum makes the experience much more streamlined and enjoyable. Starting off Volume 4, we have another intro centering around Pac-Man eating shit. The design of this museum is very similar to the previous one, so let's hop right into the return of Ishtar. And well, after dubbing my heroes Bib and Ass, I was greeted by this. I wish I could express to you how flabbergasted my Discord call was upon seeing this game. Especially considering I was faced with multiple different instances of Grimace, as well as discovering that this game is 2-player only. If you couldn't tell, this game is a sequel to the Tower of Draga, where you control Gil and the princess as they escape. This game was designed for multiplayer as I mentioned earlier, but you can play solo on the PS1 with each half of the controller handling a different character. Bizarre first impressions aside, this is a pretty cool game. It feels like it would be very fun with a partner, but sadly all my friends are currently playing Fortnite.
Frick, Buddy Hollium!
Moving on. The exhibit is very red. This one doesn't really grip me. Assault! This Activision lawsuit... hold on. Namco arcade game is a top-down tank shooter. It's a true tank game too, with the D-pad and face buttons each controlling a separate tread. It's fine, I guess. Just a little boring. The Assault exhibit features a Martian landscape with an airship flying overhead. You can also access 2 different versions of Assault here. I can't tell the difference between the two. What I can spot a difference in, though, is the Assault Plus room. It's dark, and if you hold L1, R1, triangle, and up, the woman on the game's instruction card will appear. If you interact with her, she'll be surprised and then fade out of existence. Interact with the newly spawned Assault Plus screen, and you'll be presented with the 2-player arena brand new to Assault Plus. A bit of an odd way of hiding the objectively more content-rich version of the game, but whatever, I suppose. Assault Plus features a 2-player mode, actual music, and a brand new super mode with a higher difficulty. It's not much different otherwise. Genpei Tomiden, or Genji and the Hike Clan, follows the samurai Taira no Kagekyo, a long-dead warrior revived to defeat Minamoto no Yoritomo, to save Japan from his rule and his demon army. This game has 3 different gameplay styles, interestingly enough. The first is a side-scroller, similar to something like Ninja Gaiden. Second is another side-scroller, except you are large, and there's more of a focus on combat than platforming. The final style is seen from a top-down perspective, similar to something like Zelda 1. You beat each stage by fighting your way to the end and crossing a Torii gate, where you are then sent to the next stage. This game is kinda all over the place. The rapidly changing gameplay styles and overall strange hitboxes makes it a little frustrating to play. I gotta love sprites of yokai from old video games though. Genpei's exhibit takes place at a shrine where someone I can assume is death itself is rowing a boat above your head. Ordyne is a pretty cool shoot 'em up, filled with very pretty looking graphics as you take to the sky shooting down enemies and bosses, collecting upgrades and money as you play. You can buy additional upgrades from the merchant Miyuki-chan if you fly into her trumpet ship here. This is one of my favorite games I've played while making this video. Just a real nice time. The exhibit takes place in Miyuki-chan's shop, the Sky Inn, where you'll see your character flying by the windows as well as Miyuki-chan herself at the end of the hall. She even thanks you as you leave. As a side note, despite her obscure status as a Namco shopkeep, she actually appears in another game, Project Cross Zone 2, reprising her role as a merchant. And I am haunted by the fact that it is pronounced Project Cross Zone. Every time I read it, there's a voice in my head that goes,
It's pronounced Project Cross Zone, Sinno!
I have not found a way to silence it. Finishing out Volume 4 with an obligatory Pac-Man title, we have Pac-Land, a side-scrolling 2D platformer based on the Hanna-Barbera Pac-Man cartoon. In this game, you control Pac-Man, dodging ghosts and obstacles while attempting to return a lost fairy back to Fairyland. This game is so obtuse. I get that it was a landmark to 2D platformers at the time, but the fact that you have to mash a direction to run is just irritating. Also, the timing for a lot of the jumps are just bizarre. Thankfully, the exhibit is a bit more exciting to me than the game. Here, you arrive on a beach with one of those lovely PS1 skyboxes. Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man are chilling on a towel over to the right, and a ghost can be seen hiding in the background. After spotting them enough times, they'll start chasing Pac-Man's fairy friend, where Pac-Man will go, "Damn, somebody really gotta do something." After you whack a power pellet out of a tree, Pac-Man will give chase, knock out the ghost, and instant transmission back to Miss Pac-Man's side. I always love the Pac-Man exhibits because they have those little extra touches that make the museum worth a visit. The library in this game actually has you take an elevator up to a rooftop observatory with all your typical magazine covers and strange artifacts like telephone cards. The bar is run by this woman. Shout out to her, she rocks the look. She gives you the standard games list like the previous librarian. I really enjoy this game's version of the library. It's the first time Namco Museum feels like it takes place in like a real location, especially since you can look out the window at the grainy cityscape. Also, holy shit, PS5 but long? The theater is pretty similar to the last game, serving the same function. But this time, instead of a movie theater, it features the robot band Pic-Pac, which is a real animatronic band Namco built sometime in the 80s. A neat callback for something I didn't know existed. Volume 4 definitely has the weakest lineup of games for me. The only game I really enjoy here is Ordyne, and the rest are just sort of blech. I will concede that it has a really nice museum. Pac-Land and Ordyne are some of my favorite exhibits, and the rooftop library has unparalleled vibes. So with that done, let's move on to the final museum, Volume 5. This intro is easily my favorite just because it's completely batshit. Like, Pac-Man gets chased by this dragon right off the rip. Valkyrie comes in and saves the day, only for the two of them to be attacked by this fucking thing? As a dragon drops down a Space Marine, Gumby's overweight cousin, and Scout TF2's grandfather. Now, just watch the rest. I fucking love this series. Volume 5 contains the final museum redesign, featuring the left staircase replaced with a basement containing an exhibit, and a spiral staircase holding 2 more exhibits at the top. In addition, the theater and library are accessible through an elevator in the center of the staircase, which I couldn't find after like 20 minutes of searching. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. First, we have Baraduke, a side-scrolling space shooter where you control Kissy, a space woman attempting to eradicate the hostile aliens. Once you kill enough aliens, the gate to the next floor will open. This game is kinda strange. In addition to odd-feeling controls, enemy spawns don't feel entirely well thought out. Every stage ends with, frankly, a bizarre mechanic, too. Once you beat a stage, you play roulette to see if you're allowed to increase your HP or not, with your chances getting better with the more of the orange dudes you rescue. It's alright, but nothing I'd write home about. Something cool about Volume 5 is that every exhibit has a unique animation that plays when you enter an exhibit. So Baraduke has you entering one of the exit tubes from the game. Neat! The main exhibit has you deep in an alien chasm, with some of your buddies as well as enemies floating overhead. Music's a little creepy, too. Pac-Mania is one of my favorite Pac-Man sequels. All you gotta do to keep me happy is add some funny new mechanics and a shitload of ghosts. This is exactly what Pac-Mania does. At first it looks like pretty standard Pac-Man, but you can... which, since Pac-Mania adds an assload more ghosts, lets you juke the fuck out of them. There's some other neat additions like the red power pellet, which doubles ghost points, and the green power pellet, which increases Pac-Man's speed. It's Pac-Man, but with schmovement. Pac-Mania's exhibit has you eating a bunch of fruit and passing out. You wake up in front of... a house? Oh, let's go inside. You freeloaders! Sue don't care though, until you give her a tap on the shoulder. I like this one. It's cute seeing the ghosts just hanging out. I think what they're doing here is whittling little wooden ghosts? I don't know, it's hard to tell what tool they're holding. Here we have Metrocross. Oh shit, the Brutal Moose music. This game's cool. Here you play as a runner, dodging obstacles and kicking cans, trying to reach the end of the course before time expires. It's a bit awkward to control, but I like this one. There's a lot of little strategic decisions you can make that make the game pretty engaging. Like, cans give you points when kicked, and are sent further down the track so you can kick them again. Or you could say screw the cans and jump on them to temporarily freeze the timer. Plus, there's also these ramps that give you big air but are a lot slower than running. In addition, there's a skateboard power-up that lets you very easily cross rough terrain, but if you jump, you'll hop off the board. A solid one, I like it. To enter the exhibit, you fall down one of the game's traps. This room's cool. Off to the sides, you can see the protagonists going at the gauntlet while you play around with the ramps and skateboards. The first of the games on the second floor I'll talk about is Dragon Spirit. And damn it, it's just Xevious again. It's fine. I'm already not a very big fan of Xevious, but the extra HP and more interesting music is much appreciated in this game. Also, the fucking loading screen takes me out. This exhibit. As you get eaten and taken to a music box type room where you can witness the game's protagonist, Amul, switch from his Discord form to his human form and give the princess a kiss. Aww. The final game in this collection is an unlocalized one named Valkyrie no Densetsu, which roughly translates to The Legend of Valkyrie. This game is awesome! You play as Valkyrie, who's instructed by her patron to simply save the Earth with your great power. and you're off, slashing and jumping your way through enemies, picking any of the treasure they drop up. You can use the money to buy weapons and magic as you find shops. Oh, this game does upgrades very well. Every upgrade you pick up makes you go, fuck yeah! Bitch! It's really charming, and probably one of my favorite games out of all the collections. So, first thing about this exhibit is that every other game has cabinet art on the door. I guess since this one was never localized, it's just a black box with the legend of Valkyrie on it. So, A for effort, Namco. And in here you'll be greeted by these people. Anyways, get the fuck in the portal. After wandering through some bushes in the forest, you'll enter a clearing with some of those Gumby creatures, as well as Valkyrie, afflicted with the sleeve. She just like me. Moving on to our last exhibits, exit the elevator and you'll find a pretty sadly downgraded library. It's pretty empty. The only thing of note here are these robots based on Mappy characters, which, after a little bit of research, I learned are actually the first appearance of these characters. Mappy and Goro here were first released as small maze-solving robots that predate the Mappy video game by 3 years. On the flip side, you'll find the theater, which has the sound test and slideshows to be expected like the previous titles, with the addition of Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man acting out the famous Romeo and Juliet balcony scene. And that's Namco Museum Volume 5. This collection has a pretty nice selection of games. The only drawback is that this game has the lowest number of games total, having only 5. Regardless, the increased interactivity of the exhibits was a welcome treat, and for only being used once, this redesign of the museum was the most lively and detailed by far. Overall, a lovely way to end the series. Unless there's a final, secret entry in the Namco Museum series. You might think I'm messing with you, because if there's a volume for each letter of Namco, how can there be another one? Well, that's because there's a letter you're forgetting. A letter most people don't even pronounce when they say Namco. So, what is it then? Well, it's the registered trademark symbol. This is Namco Museum Encore, a sort of last hurrah for the series, only released in Japan. Since it is an encore, it's not really a complete entry in the series. They sadly cut the actual museum feature and instead replaced it with this spacey void holding the receptionist and arcade machines. But I figured it deserved some recognition regardless. First up is King and Balloon, and this is just Galaxian. The only difference is, if your dudes get whacked, they don't actually die, they respawn. So how do you lose? Well, if one of the balloons makes contact with the king, they try to run with him in tow, and if they escape, you lose a life. Of course, you can still shoot him down if you're quick enough. An odd but interesting take on Galaxian. Next is Motos. This game's kinda like a space-age sumo wrestling game. Your goal is to knock all the enemies out of the ring while avoiding getting knocked out yourself. As you progress through stages, sometimes you'll find power parts and jump parts that you can equip when a stage begins, which will increase your power or grant you the ability to hop over small gaps. Definitely one of the more novel games Namco has put out. Here we have Sky Kid. You play as a bird flying a plane going on a bombing run, shooting down enemies and dropping a bomb on your target once you're in range. This game's neat. Not my favorite, but I like the little takeoff and land sections, they're cute. Plus, your loop actually grants you invincibility. I always like additional movement mechanics in games like this, because I'm a little bad at them. Rolling Thunder is about a secret agent attempting to save one of his fellow agents by running down an impossibly long hallway full of gamers. You take out enemies by shooting them or evading them by hiding indoors or jumping between levels. But you have to keep an eye out for extra guns and ammo though, because it is pretty easy to run out. This game is fine. Not my favorite. Wonder Momo. Aw, that's cute. This game is a tokusatsu parody, where you play as Momo kicking the shit out of evil dudes. Kick enough dudes or run into the whirlwind and you'll transform into Wonder Momo, who can throw a wonder hoop and fire off energy waves. This game is cute, but that's about it. Your attacks in normal Momo form have the stupidly short range, and the enemies are a pain in the ass. I do like the boss designs though. Very fun little toku guys. This is Rompers. You play as Chap, a gardener who has to save his girlfriend after she gets captured. You do this by dodging enemies and collecting all the keys in each level. The way you deal with enemies is really unique. You don't have any direct form of attack, but you can push over walls and crush enemies. This allows for a bit of strategy where you have to decide if killing an enemy or using a wall as cover is a better choice. This all gets much more complicated with the later enemies and busier maze designs. Probably my favorite of the Encore bunch. The final game of this collection is Dragon Saber, and oh god damn it, it's Xevious for a third time! I gotta say that this Dragon Spirit sequel at the very least is my favorite of the Xevious type games, because the addition of a charge shot and actual sick music. I didn't get very far in this one. Encore doesn't have my favorite collection of games, but as it's basically a bonus, it's a sweet little finale. And that concludes our tour of the Namco Museum. I hope you enjoyed that dive into a lesser known piece of Namco history. It's a bit of a shame that this style of game never really caught on. If you owned one of them, it was most likely volumes 1 or 3. They were the only ones that sold enough to be re-released as greatest hits versions, and I really can't blame them. Well-known version of Pac-Man, plus like 1 or 2 other Namco classics, really was the winning formula. And you can see this continue with their later museum-less releases of the series. The concept of a digital museum is such a lovely little portal back into how monumental the jump to 3D was in the 90s. Like, this is something you really wouldn't see today outside of the indie space. So seeing a company dedicated to providing a little bit of an archive of their assets and development material this early is incredibly cool. And I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I did exploring the halls of games I'd never heard of. Hey, thanks for watching. Trust me when I say I did not think this would take this long. All sorts of life stuff came up, but I finally got it out, and you can trust me on the fact that the next one will come out sooner, I swear. If not, I owe somebody $20. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good night.